welcome everyone.
It already was
Thank you for
recorded.
joining the town hall this evening. This town hall is being video recorded, as I told you earlier, and we will be posting it to the HOA website in the next 24 to 48 hours or so.
Stay close.
I am George Spaldorf. I'm president of the HOA. But before we get started with the main program, I have two brief items I want to share with you. First, by a show of hands, how many of you utilize Republic Trash Service? Okay. How many of you had service problems in the last 4 to 6 weeks? Yeah, okay. Well, for everyone's information, there's been a lot of significant disruptions throughout the colony in the last 4 to 6 weeks with Republic. In the past week, we have made significant progress in resolving one of the biggest issues, is that we had nobody to call. There was nobody to contact. There was nobody who recognized Sports Colony as anything. So I wrote the executive officers in Arizona and kind of told them what I thought of the situation. And I didn't hear anything for a week. But on Tuesday, I got a call from the new general manager of the Virginia area. And I have his cell phone, I have his email, and I have his office number. And I have his operations manager's name and telephone number and cell phone number. And yesterday, the operations manager and our manager, Drew Moore, had a conversation. And the beginnings is, if we're going to have a disruption or if anything's abnormal, we're going to let you know ahead of time. What if they agree? And if there's going to be anything forecast where they can't deliver or a truck breaks down or something else, they're going to call us. Again, what if they agree? We've also gotten commitments for communications. So like some other things where we don't know for sure if they're going to delay a day or pick up on the day in question, we're going to now know. So I think we're doing pretty well on that. Secondly, it's September. That means our nominating committee is working like crazy to find candidates to run for the board of directors. Don't look at me, I can't run again. Terms are 2 years, and as long as your dues are current, you've met the basic requirements. We need some folks to volunteer. This isn't the worst job in the world, and there's a lot of personal satisfaction to it. I'm finishing my 6th term in February. Before that, I was on security. Before that, I was on the nominating committee. This isn't the worst job. This is a job that you get a lot of personal satisfaction and you can make a difference. So please carefully think about it. So on to the topic at hand. I'd like to now turn the meeting over to the 3 board members who are leading the task force on document revisions. They are Sally Frazier, the board treasurer, Roy Madison, director at large, and Ken Spencer, the board secretary. Thank you for your kind attention. Please listen to them carefully. The bill in Ford's Colony can be vicious. You need to hear the facts up front and the truth up front. With that, I turn it over to Sally Frazier. Thank you.
So thank you, George. And welcome, everybody. And I thank you all for attending tonight's presentation, either in person or virtually. So let me get into the microphone. Go away. We hope to provide important information on changes to our governing documents, which the Board of Directors proposes. I'm going to once again introduce the members of the task force. As George said, there's 3 board members. I'm the chair. Roy Madison and Ken are part of the committee. In addition, and we will be your presenters this evening. Additionally, the chair of the Finance Committee, Nancy Mull, who's in the back of the room. The chair of the Facilities Committee, Ray McCaskey, who's in his RV someplace off in the U.S. enjoying vacation. Communications Committee Representative John Butterworth, Drew Mulhare, the manager, and Sally Bowles, assistant manager, round out our group. Our HOA attorney, Sue Charlie, has also played an important role. The board of directors passed a resolution in June establishing a task force and defining its objectives. Our purpose is twofold. First, we are proposing the institution of a capital contribution fee, nicknamed CCF, a new source of funds for our capital needs. This is a fee to be paid by the purchaser of a property in Forest Colony. We have several slides which will define the CCF and explain the need for the new fee. Secondly, we will review a number of other necessary housekeeping changes to our government document. We have only a few slides that we are presenting this evening, and we'd ask that you hold your questions until we complete them. For those who are attending virtually, please use the question option below the three handouts on your screen. Click on the right-hand box and write the question on the bottom half of the box that appears for the questions. Okay. Let's see. So now I introduce Roy Madsen, and he'll start a presentation by discussing the capital contribution fee. Thank you.
I guess the new guy gets to do this part. You hear me? I'm going to go off script as I always do. So I'm going to start this with asking a question. Does anybody in this room know what the value of Forest Colony's assets are? I know what you do. Okay, and Carmen does too. Does anybody know? Any idea? Well, it's $40 million. Okay. Now, were these assets put in place last year? No. Come on. No, right, okay. So what has to happen? Assets need to be maintained, items replaced, etc. You look over here. There's a divider that goes in this room. You'll see caution on the door. I've been meaning to talk to Drew about that, but we won't at the moment. Okay. What do you think pays for that replacement? Our capital reserve. Okay. So what's the name of the fee that we're talking about? It's a capital contribution fee. And the real intent behind this fee is to ensure that we have sufficient funding to do the maintenance and replacement to maintain the $40 million of assets that we have. And guess what? That's getting to be a challenge. As is indicated in the article, this year has been, and I'm not going to talk about COVID. You know, that's one of the reasons it's been kind of a strange year. Is that, I'm sure you've all seen things about lumber is up 100% in costs. Gasoline up 50%, etc. Well, when we're doing capital replacement and maintenance, those costs are incurred too. And not only are those costs incurred for that, they're incurred for our operating expenses. Now, our fees, as the gentleman up front spoke, is that, yes, our fees covers both operating costs as well as a small capital contribution made to our capital reserve. But if our costs keep on going up, what tends to get squeezed? It's either that capital contribution or its assessment increases. Nobody wants those. So one of the reasons why a capital contribution fee is a good idea is because it provides more funds for Forest Colony's reserve. The second reason why it's really important that we do. How many people remember special assessments? Do you know what they were, remember what they were for? the pipes. Does anybody have any idea what the intended life of the pipes were? 30, 40 years? Okay, how long did they last? Okay. We have a capital reserve model, and that capital reserve model has assumptions about what our costs will be as we go forward. Those assumptions can be kind of thrown out the window if we have a failure like we had with pipes. Okay, or costs, just like I was talking about, go haywire. Okay, use lumber as an example. I'm sure that the estimated cost for these dividers, and here I'll look through so you can nod and say yes. Okay, were actually a lot more than we anticipated they would be because of what was happening with their costs. That's the world we're living in right now. So we're going to have, because we're talking about capital costs, is we're going to have problems or issues with capital because of our current environment. And there's one last item, which really isn't the driver behind this, but it is part of this. And that is that we have new residents. We have current residents. They all would like to see new and different things. So there is a demand for some new amenities, et cetera. And guess what? How are they funded? They're also funded by capital items. And so our FCHOA has a real challenge to figure out how it's going to have enough capital funds to meet, especially the maintenance and replacement needs as we go forward, and even to meet some of the amenity needs that people will want. So that gives you the why for what we're doing. Just to hit a couple of high points on the mechanics, Sally did say that this is a fee that's assessed at closing when property transfers. It's paid by the purchaser. There's a piece of gold in that, as a resident anyway. That means that that fee is not being paid by me. It's not being paid by the resident or the property owner. It's being paid by the purchaser when they settle on the property. What's its purpose? I'll be clear on that. This is really for capital reserves and capital needs. And what's the amount? The amount is $982, I think is the amount, or 96 or something like that. It's less than $1,000. It is tied to 2 months of the annual assessment. It was 2 quarters. Another organization, pardon me. It's tied to 2 quarters of the annual assessment, and it's tied to the assessment so that if the assessment goes up a little bit, so will the capital fee. One thing to note about the capital fee, we're not doing something new or different. Every HOA that I look at has something like this as part of the way that they fund their operations. So we're just coming up with something maybe we should have been doing before, but we're not going to talk about that. I think I covered most of this that's on this slide already. Okay, yes, the majority of income comes from quarterly assessments. A small portion of that is used for the annual capital contribution. Okay, capital funding, repair, and replacement right now accounts for about 20% of our annual expenditures, but that doesn't include the pipes. Just as an aside, that is separate. Other than to increase the quarterly assessment, our ability to raise funds is limited. We have 2 choices. Basically, special assessments, and I wanted to see a raise of hands of how many people are special assessments. I don't see anybody, okay? Or changing our quarterly assessment, or annual assessment. We have used special assessments 4 times in the past 20 years.
It's been a while.
It's been a while, okay. Okay. You know, if we have anything major that happens absent this, and I'd like to use our 27 dams as an example. Okay. We have dated infrastructure here, and I'm not saying there's any issue with dams, just so you know. Okay. Is that something like that could be very expensive. Okay, we would have to figure out a way to fund that. Just the way we had to figure out how to fund the pipes. There is a small capital investment fund for some amenities, but as I said, that's not the major reason why we're doing this. And last but not least, okay, the good thing about this fee is it's going to enable us to better manage the annual assessment. It's going to give us flexibility that we don't have. As was said in the article, it's a new tool in our financing or funding tool chest. That's something that we need. The last slide I just want to touch on is that give you a little comparison. These are the other 4 major HOAs in Williamsburg. Currently, everyone but us has this fee. In my mind, I look at that and I see some good news. Guess who has the lowest fees in Williamsburg? Everybody who thinks it's colonial heritage, raise their hand. Okay, just need you to do math. We're about a little less than $2,000 a year. If you carry this forward and you look at the difference between what they're charging now and capital contribution fee, we're also going to be significantly less. Our amount will be $982. Instead of saying 0.05 of the sales price and use a sales price of $400,000 in Kingsville, that would be $2,000. Okay, twice as much as what we're talking about. If we go to Governor's Land, it's half the annual assessment. That's pretty easy. That's $1,400. If you go to Colonial Heritage, it's 150% of the annual assessment. That's $5,000. So the point I really want to make with that is that what we are asking for, and we really are asking you for your vote on this proposal, is to give us a new tool that provides a source of funds that gives us the flexibility to meet the needs of everybody who lives here in Forest Colony. And with that, I'll turn this over to Ken to talk about the changes to the governing documents. Pull this down a little bit here. There's going to be 2 different resolutions that we're going to ask you to vote on. The first one, as we just explained, is the approval of adding a capital contribution fee to our bylaws and declarations. And bylaws is the governing documents that we use to run the association. The declarations is what we have to give to purchasers so they know about the homeowner association. There's another thing we're going to ask you to do too. We're going to ask you to approve a new set of bylaws and declarations. And this has come about what we call from administrative changes. And I'll cite some examples so you can see where we're coming from. As we went through looking at these documents, we found out that some of the developer rights that were in the 2013 version of our bylaws and declarations are no longer applicable. Such thing as the appointment of an environmental control committee, reserved areas and retained parcels, general rules for development of multifamily parcels. By the way, we just updated those with some more restrictive covenants and have that already filed. So all these things need to be kind of worked out of the old documents. Additionally, our good Virginia General Assembly changed the nomenclature in the Property Owners Association Act. They basically went through and renumbered the whole thing. So all of our citations and references are no longer valid. So we've had our lawyer working and looking all these up and bringing these back, correcting all these, putting them in our bylaws, putting them in our declarations so that they'll be correct. The third thing is the Virginia courts are expressing a need for more specific authority granted in writing to the governing agents. And so we're tightening up a lot of this stuff to be very specific so that if the court case comes up, there'll be documentation that says why we did what we did.
And then also with the Virginia General Assembly and their changes to the POA Act, there have been some general deference into giving existing restrictions for declarations such as short-term leasing, Airbnb, verbo, solar panels, things like this. So we better just update our documents to make sure that our policies are clear. Besides the General Assembly, county ordinances are expanding certain definitions such as dwelling unit, single-family home. We want to make sure these are consistent in our documents so that we're saying the same thing that the county and the legislators are saying. So basically, we've got a whole big update of actions happening. Also, because of COVID now, some of the things we had in there before, just as an example, we said we would file documents using the postage. Well, now people are shipping documents back and forth. We need to allow for what's really going on in reality. So that's the second part that we're going to ask you to vote on to approve these changes. We call them just administrative cleanups, but it's important things for the running of the homeowners association in the future, so that we don't trip on ourselves. But that's something I'll let you wrap up with what you have to do.
Okay. So, as Ken mentioned, I'm going to mention again, the final piece of tonight's discussion is how these propositions get approved. In January, when you receive your ballot to vote for the new board of director members, there will be two resolutions included. One will be to vote for the necessary housekeeping updates, which Ken just mentioned, housekeeping updates to our various documents. And the second will be to amend the declaration to include the capital contribution fee presented by Roy. In order to pass these resolutions, 2/3 of our residents have to vote favorably for them. So get your neighbors out to vote, please. We many times have between 35 and 40% voting at the annual election. We need 66 and 2/3. Please spread the word. Following that, there will be filing requirements and notification to our residents. As noted, we expect to complete the process by June 2022. So it's not going to be an immediate thing. If somebody's in the process of selling a house or thinking of selling a house, we're giving you fair warning to go out and get that done. So this is our presentation for the evening, and we'll move into questions. Let me just mention one more time.